All right, hey, if you have a Bible with you, turn to Ephesians 6. If you don't have a Bible, as I always say, we have Bibles in the courtyard. We'd love for you to take them free of charge. You can go nab one, bring it to church, read it at home. We love people to be able to look at the scriptures as we open the scriptures. We always want you to know that what we teach from this stage is not just from my mind, not my opinions, but with the Word of God itself, as much as we can show that. We always have slides, but as you know, it's always good to look at the Word yourself. So if you don't have one, get one. If you do have one, Ephesians 6 is where we're going to be. Before we get there, a couple things I want to say. First off, if you noticed when you walked in, there was a little table and banner out there in the courtyard on the side over here for a golf tournament committee type thing. Wonderful looking people. Yes, Tina. Yeah, Tina was there. Okay. Tina's there, and she is there because, as you know, we significantly partner with a ministry called the Hub Las Vegas. We love the Hub. The Hub is amazing. It does incredible work here in our city of ministering and reaching the most vulnerable and I would say even broken people in our city. And so we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We push people. When you serve with us, we want you to serve church and serve the city. The Hub is our lane to do that. We financially partner with them. We partner with them through serving opportunities. We have one coming up in September. But every year they do a golf tournament as a fundraiser. And so October 20th, I believe, October 20th. Amazing. Okay, good. I was right. They're having a golf tournament, and what they need right now is two things: sponsors and golfers, okay? So if you love Jesus and you love Jesus healing our city, this golf tournament, and if you love golf, this golf tournament is for you, okay? I want to encourage you, just go check it out after service. Stop by, grab a card. If you're a business owner, if you're anyone who just is really passionate about that, you think, I got some time on October 20th to hit a few balls, stop by, get some information. Seriously, it'd be a blessing to our church if we could partner with them above and beyond in this way, okay? Sound good? Yep. Amazing. I'm expecting everyone now to go to the table. Every single person. I'm kidding. Secondly, in 2 weeks, we have Anniversary Sunday. We're celebrating a year of King City Church. Come on, we're excited. And one of the things that's happening on that Sunday is we're permanently going to 2 services. We're opening up a second one. I know we're going to move to 10 a.m. to either 11 or 9 and add the other one. So 9/11 is going to be our service time starting September 7th. If you show up that day at 10 a.m., you'll be disappointed, and I'll tell you it's your fault, okay? So tell people, remind yourself, have alarms set. We're doing it because this room is getting hotter because it's getting too full, okay? I know you feel it. I feel it right now with the air conditioning. Lord, send it now, okay? But we're going to have 2 services and start a book study in the Gospel of John, as well as we're giving out free T-shirts to commemorate the 2nd year. And you are currently looking at that T-shirt on me. This is the T-shirt. On the back, it says, I don't like showing you my back, but here it is. It's the City of Second Chances kind of shirt. And really, it's kind of okay, yeah, we can clap for the shirt. Excited for the shirt. We just want to do something. One, if you look at Las Vegas, it has a few different nicknames, one of which is it's the capital of second chances. I thought that's adorable because not only is it an awesome name, but how much is the gospel not a message of hope and second chances for us? And so we just said, well, let's change a little bit to the City of Second Chances. The sagebrush is on there for our state flower, state plant. Got a little other details in there. And I told you in January, if you're here with us, we went through a series about our city, about revival. And I told you, we will not reach this place if we don't love this place. It may not be the best place on earth. It's not the worst place on earth by any means. But I think it's a bad rap. And I've had my own shared experience of being a local born here, of feeling jaded towards it. But now, as we have planted this church, I want to love this place. And so this shirt really has nothing to do with King City on it. It's really just about our city. If you live in Las Vegas, you can wear this T-shirt. And someone asks you, hey, where'd you get that shirt from? You'd be like, my church made it. That's awesome. You can bring them. They can get a free T-shirt anytime. If you bring a friend, because it's a T-shirt, we'll honor them and give them a free T-shirt. If they don't want to come, but they want a T-shirt, that's totally fine. It'll be $50, all right? That's it. So if they want to pay that, that's great. Otherwise, you just got to come to church. But come on September 7th. You'll get a free T-shirt. Everyone who shows up will be able to grab one. If we run out, we'll get more. But we're excited to have you guys as we commemorate the 2nd year, as we celebrate what God's doing with the gospel, this message of second chances as we live in this city and continue to seek God's face for revival and gospel movement. It's just kind of a nod to that. So we're excited. September 7th is going to be great. But we have been in a series called Win the Home, all right? 4-week series that we've been in from Ephesians 5:21 all the way to Ephesians 6, verse 4. We've tackled Ephesians 5 part. We talked about the family. We talked about the marriage relationship last week. And now the next 2 weeks, we're going to be looking at Ephesians 6, 1 through 4. Today is going to be 1 through 3. And we're going to be talking about this relationship between kids and parents, all right? The other half that really is important with the home is the kids that you live with and the parents that are the ones that brought forth those kids into the world. And we're going to be looking at how can we together win the home by living out those roles and responsibilities. What does that look like? So I'm going to do my best this week because this week is about kids. It's a message really to them, which I'll explain in just a moment. I'm not saying most of this room is now not applicable to this message. It will be. But this is going to be for them and what God calls them to do. And then next week is all about parenting. And so I'm going to bleed a little bit over every now and then, but I'm going to try really as hard as I can to stay in this lane talking to kids, all right? So let's establish this. Who is this message exactly for? We find the answer in Ephesians 6, verse 1. The first word that Paul uses is children. He starts off the chapter by just saying that one word, children. That word means a child or offspring. The sense of that word is a son or daughter of any age. The word used here is not the same used for infants or young children. There's different Greek words that can communicate that age difference when it's like little kids who have come to Jesus. This one's different. This is the word that's used in 1 John 3 when it talks about you and me being children of God, that we've received the right to become children of God. It's the same word used right here. So it's not a word that's describing youngness or age. It's a word that communicates relationship rather than age. Does that make sense? So in a very real sense, every single person in this room categorically falls within this word. Because you may not be a husband or father or mother or wife one day. You may never have that opportunity, but you will always be in some shape or form a child. Every single person, last I checked, got here through one way. You have a parent. Someone brought you forth into this world. No one else has beaten that system, not the last time I checked, unless it's a very unique case. But for the most part, since history began, people come from people. And so no matter what, you always are going to be under this banner of being a child. Of course, you're not a dependent your whole life. You move out, you become your own autonomous person or family unit, but regardless, you are a child. Now with that, though that is true, and that will be applicable throughout the sermon, what we do believe, what commentators and scholars believe, is that Paul here, when he says children in Ephesians 6, does have the middle to high school range in mind. Kind of that age. Why do you think that? Because it had to have meant something to the people in the room when he first wrote it. When they read it in the church of Ephesus, and they just rolled out the scroll and they got to this part, he could, of course, later on, all the young kids, it would apply to them. But in the very beginning, it's like this has to hit someone immediately. Like someone who can hear and understand and apply it to their life. If I have my 3-year-old on stage with me right now, which I would never do, and I told him, hey son, did you know the Bible tells you that you should obey and honor me? You know what he would say to me? He wouldn't understand what I just said. So he'd just look at me, curious, probably say no, scream, and run away. That's what he does, okay? It would be useless. Paul's not wasting his words here. He's meaning for it to fall on someone who can understand it and apply it to their life. Now, the fact that Paul does this, by the way, is insanely countercultural and passionately Christian. The fact that he would take a part of his letter written to a church addressing the whole, that's how this worked. Ephesians was a letter that he wrote to a church. They gathered together on Sunday. Some dude rolled up there and said, here's what Paul wrote, and they read the whole thing, addressed to them. So for him to give a section to children was insanely countercultural back in the first century. And it tells us a couple things about the early church. 2 things. First off, the early church believed children were members of the church community and could have their own relationship with Christ. They believed that. They weren't just like an add-on. They believed children, kids, teenagers actually had a place in the church. They could have their own relationship with Jesus. And so again, we just talked about with Salt Company, college students, but the same is true about middle and high school students and younger kids. We have King's Kids over there, and right now we are in the means of getting our King City Youth Ministry off the ground. And they're having an event August 29th, by the way, Pizza at the Park, and then September 14th, they're launching that bad boy. If you got teenagers, come through. We'd love to have you, okay? If you have more information about that, ask us after service. But we want to help see this come to fruition, to have a place where King City understands that kids from all ages have value and positions in the church, that they can have their own and are intended to have their own relationship with Jesus. That's the first thing we see. The second thing we see about the early church is that they held to a high view of the sanctity of life, especially relating to children. Now, if you know anything about Roman Greco culture in the first century, what you would know about it is that it was a brutal time to be a young child. They had often practiced this concept where if the child was unwanted, if it wasn't the gender they wanted, if it was weak, it was feeble, if it was sick, if it was inconvenienced, the common practice in their day would be to take the baby, set it outside, abandon it, and let it to die. It was common. That was a frequent practice. We have actually letters, discussions between parents who say, hey, if it's a boy, keep it. If it's a girl, toss it. We can see that back in the first century. In fact, kids weren't even adopted into the family or considered a part of the family unless the father of the house decided they were. They had no rights, they had no protection. It was totally up to the father to determine if this kid can be part of our family or not. No, toss him out. That was common practice that no one intervened with until one group started doing something drastically different, and that group was Christians. You know what they did? They started finding those babies and adopting them. No one did that. But Christians, understanding the sanctity of life, the value of children, they went out and they would raise those children as their own. Insanely countercultural, passionately Christian. That's been true from day one. It's been true to today. All the great things that we see in our world, orphanages, adoptions, those people that are most passionate about, the scriptures call us to in James 1, by the way, pure religion is just that, visiting widows and adopting, going to the orphanage, making sure people are taken care of, the kids are going to be raised well. Those are Christians that started that movement. So what we know this is that Christianity has and always will have a high view of kids. They have inherent value and are a blessing. Despite what our culture would like to think or say, they are not a burden. They are not a problem. They are a gift. And not just a tax credit in that. Although those are nice too. The early church was passionate about the sanctity of life in children. With that established, this radical moment of Paul addressing children, let's see what he actually writes to them in Ephesians 6, 1 through 3. It says this, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Okay, so here's the question that we want to ask and answer today regarding children. How do kids win the home? We gave a definition last week with marriage, with wives and husbands. Here's how kids win the home. Kids demonstrate Christ-likeness by obeying and honoring their parents. That's your, right there, target, goal. You want to win the home. You want to do it right. You want to see a thriving household. If kids are going to play their part, it looks like this, obeying and honoring their parents. Now remember, Ephesians 5, verse 21, right? That we should submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. That's the baseline for everyone in the home. I think of you before I think of me, right? That's the universal principle. If you want to see marriage go well, you want to see parenting go well, you want to be a kid and have that go well, considering other people, submitting to their preferences, thinking that they're more important than yourself is a surefire way to make that happen. Best shot you have. So for kids to do that, for them to submit to their parents, it looks like this, to demonstrate Christ-likeness by obeying and honoring their parents. So let's break those two things apart. What does it look like to win the home by obeying their parents? The first thing we see, the first part of this, is obey their parents. Verse 1 says, children, again, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. That word obey is what it means, you guessed it, to be obedient to. It's from two words in the Greek, hupo, which means under, and akouo, which is where we get our word acoustics from, which means hear. So under to hear, communicating the idea of coming under what one hears. You're under duty. You're under command. That's what it is. If you hear it, get under it, submit to it, and do it. That's what obey means here. Kids are to do that with their parents. Do what I say is what parents would say. That's the assignment. Now, we'll hit on this more next week. But I just want to take a moment to just talk to the parents in the room to understand this is a godly design, okay? In God's family, parents, you hold all authority to parent your kids. That is your divine assignment with your children, to parent them. You are, for lack of better words, the boss of their life. Apart from Jesus, you got that role. It's not a principal. It's not a coach. It's not the government. It's not even me. You are responsible for them. You have been assigned to them. You have, in God's eyes, the command to parent them because they are to obey you, to hear what you say and to do it. This is not like marriage. It's not a partnership. Okay, it's not like me and my boy, me and my girl are going to figure this thing out together like friends. No, it's not parenting. It's not Adam had Eve, the helper, to come and shore up his weaknesses for them to rule and reign over creation. It's not what this is. It's parents leading and guiding and nurturing their children, telling them what they ought to do. That's what this looks like. Now, there's parameters to it. If you're a kid in the room now, you're like, this guy is just a loser right now, telling these parents, emboldening these parents right now. It's not just a tyrannical reign. Next week, we're going to look at that. There's parameters. There's objectives there. There's a way to parent the right and wrong way. But I think today, I just want to embolden you. You have every right to be that person in their life. You, no one else. Don't abdicate that. Don't give it to someone else. Don't feel bad about it. That is your role in their life. In fact, Colossians 3:20, a similar passage says this, children, obey your parents, guess what? In everything, for this pleases the Lord. You know what's included in everything? Everything. Yeah, most things, everything. Obey your parents in everything. Like, this is severe. So much so that back in the Old Testament, you could read this in Deuteronomy 21, verse 18. It's where it starts. There was a process that if a child was rebellious, unruly, the mom and dad can take that kid, go to the elders of the people, make a case, say, this kid will not listen. Rebellious, unruly. And then they would go through a process to determine if that child should be put to death or not. Some of you are like, not bad. I mean, like, should we critique that too much? I mean, maybe that's the way. That is what they did in the Old Testament. That was Old Testament law. It was a severity to disobey your parents. The fact that we don't do that anymore is a good thing, but nonetheless, God sees this as very important for kids to obey their parents. So much so that it's a marker of depravity and the end times when people don't listen to their parents. You want proof of this? Sure you do. Romans 1, look at this. Romans 1, 20 through 30. Listen to what it's saying. And since they did not fit to acknowledge God, this is what Paul is writing to the Romans and saying, hey, when things go bad and people do all of horrible things, they get to the bottom of brokenness, this is what it looks like. They don't acknowledge God. God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. What does that sound like? They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They're full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They're gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, and you guessed it, disobedient to their parents. The spiral of depravity, and you get there. It goes on a little further. But in group of that, when God's trying to show us a picture of bleakness, included in that is kids not obeying their parents. How about 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 2? But understand this, that in the last days, when it's all fallen apart, there will come times of difficulty. What is that going to look like? People will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful and unholy. So the fact that we don't put our kids to death, I think is an improvement. But nonetheless, the scriptures in New Testament does not see it as lessened. It's not like now we're not very concerned about it. No, it's very severe. It's a big deal to God that the family functions in this way. Now, let me ask you this for everyone in the room. If this is the case for earthly parents and earthly kids, that they ought to obey their parents in everything, that it is a high sin to disobey and rebel against them, how much more do you think it is to do that as children of God? That's application for us today. Remember, marriage is an echo of things to come. Parenting is supposed to be a place where we demonstrate to our kids pictures and titles, understandings of God that they can apply later down the line. Like, I draw from God being my father by how my dad was a father to me, for better or for worse. That's true for you in this room, for lack thereof. Or if you had a great dad. When you hear God as a father, it's probably really comforting to you. If you didn't have a father, you had an abusive dad, that's probably a hard title to understand. The ideal pictures we've talked about in this series, right? Ideal and unideal world is that we're to demonstrate this relationship so that it can be a greater impact in our life down the road. So if our kids are supposed to obey us, how much more should we obey our Father in everything? Now, back to this. That begs a question. Obey your parents, obey them in everything. The question is there ever a time not to obey your parents? Now the kids are like, yes. Yeah, preach, pastor, come on. The short answer is yes, there is a time not to obey your parents. Jesus taught that when there is a choice to obey your parents or follow him, the right choice is always to follow him, right? Few examples of this. One will be on the screen. The first two will not be. Matthew 4:22, when Jesus calls his first disciples in the Gospel of Matthew. He's got John and James, Zebedee, right? They're there. They're fishermen. He says, hey, follow me. I'll make you fishers of men. You know what it says in the text in Matthew 4:22? They left their net. They left their boat. They left their father who was there, Zebedee, and they followed Jesus. Again, culturally, they're leaving their means of living, their protection, their father, and they're following this other guy, this rabbi. They just abandon him. It's an extreme form of allegiance. Matthew 8:22, a guy gets called to follow Jesus. You might know the story, right? And the guy says, hey, Jesus, I want to follow you, but real quick, let me go bury my father, and I'll catch up with you down the road. And Jesus says, no. Leave the dead to bury their dead. You follow me. And as far as we can tell, the man never followed him. Now, what he's saying is Jesus knew this man's heart's condition. He was trying to look like he had the right intentions to follow Jesus, but didn't really actually want to follow Jesus, and was going to use a cultural thing of burial, which was about a year-long process, and saying, once I get ready and I feel right, I'll come follow you. And Jesus says, no. It's right now or it's never. Or Matthew 10:34-37, this section, Jesus makes it pretty plain and clear. He says, do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a person's enemies will be those of his own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Sharp words, is it not? But we have to understand this. Clearly, Jesus is not trying to raise up a generation of rebellious, evil children who hate their parents and hate their moms and dads. These rules, these commands are still bound to us. He wants you to honor and obey your mother and father. But here's the bottom line. It's clear that Jesus wants us to obey and honor our parents, but never at the cost of following him in his will. So the ideal picture is this never is an issue. If you have Christian parents in your family, this problem is probably not present. You're on the same page. Your parents have the heart of God. They love the things of God. The Spirit of God indwells in them. So they're for their kids following the Lord. So this issue of like, oh man, I'm being pulled this way and that way isn't present. In Jesus' teaching, if the whole family doesn't get on board, there's still a call on your life, an allegiance to me that supersedes everything else. Additionally, we'll see in a moment, the verse includes parameters itself when it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord. That phrase, in the Lord, is not attached to parents, but to obey. It helps us understand that Paul is not limiting the kind of parents we obey, but informing the kind of obedience we should have toward all parents. He's not just saying only obey Christian parents. That's not what he's saying. He's saying obey all your parents as though you were obeying me. So it's a little bit thin. It takes some discernment here. But he's not just trying to say you only want to follow those who follow me. It's saying as long as you're under their jurisdiction, under their roof, outside of unique circumstances, you obey them. That's how you win the home. So, kids, are you showing Christ-likeness by obeying your parents? Or are you living a life of rebellion towards them? Everyone else, as children of God, are you obeying your Heavenly Father in everything? Does your relationship with Him look like what you hope your relationship with your kids look like? First way they win the home as children is we obey our parents. Second thing is we honor our parents. Kids honor their parents. Verse 2 says, honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. The word honor here means to esteem, honor, prize, fix evaluation upon. So it's clear that a parent should feel valued by their children, respected by their children, loved by their children. That's what honor looks like. Honestly, in the dependent phase of your life, obedience is honoring. But I would say this, where obedience is the action, honor is the attitude. Because you know better than me. You can do the right thing the wrong way and be wrong. I used to fight with a guy all the time about this. Dude always wanted to be right, and he was right, but he was wrong because he went about it the wrong way. He never understood. And we've been there ourselves, haven't we? You can do the right thing the wrong way and still be wrong. I do this in my marriage. I might do the things Hannah asked me to do. I might be a little louder about it than normal. My heels might be a little heavier than typical times, might slam or firmly shut a door. Same with my kids. Ask them to do something. They might do it begrudgingly, clean up toys and smashing them on the ground. They're doing what I ask them to do, but obviously and not in an honoring way. Honor is an attitude. It's a heart posture. of how we go about this. This is not only true for, again, the physical mother and father and the child, but also for a heavenly parent. It's very possible for you and I to do what God calls us to do the wrong way with the wrong heart. Jesus rebuked the Pharisees and scribes in Matthew 23 when he says this, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you're like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful. You look the part, but within you're full of dead people's bones and all uncleanliness. So you also outwardly appear righteous to others. Everyone thinks you're awesome, but within you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness." You want to know who only can see the inside of your heart? God. So you can fool other people, but you can't fool him. Earlier in Matthew, he would say, "These people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me." Meaning this, I'm not honored by what they're saying. Because he's not just after you doing the right things, he's after your heart and what you do. The problem is, apart from Jesus, we can't do that. Christianity is not just about doing the right stuff. It's a call to transformation. This is the gospel message. Apart from Jesus, we'd all be like the Pharisees and scribes. At our best, we're outwardly looking the part, but being full of sin and brokenness. Thankfully, this is what God set out to fix. Prophetically, he talked about it in Ezekiel 36. He says this, "I will sprinkle clean water on you. You shall be clean from all your uncleanness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you. I'm going to remove all your sin. I'll give you a new heart, a new spirit I will put within you, and I'll remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh that beats, that is alive. And I'll put my own spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules." After a whole story in the Old Testament of the people of God failing time and time again to do what he called them to do, finally God said, all right, in the new covenant, I'm changing the game. I'm giving you my spirit so you can, as Romans 8 says, walk in a way that actually pleases the Lord. So as Romans 6 says, you can actually obey from the heart. It's not just from the mind. I know what's right or wrong, but actually my heart cry is to walk in the ways of God. And he empowers me to do just that. That's the gospel message because of what Jesus has done for you and I. Him, God in the flesh, as the perfect Son of God, obedient to the Father, went to the cross to die and pay for our sins. And because of that now, he empowers us as children, whether it just be as children of God or children of our mothers and fathers here on earth, we are now able to obey and honor them. Apart from him, I don't think you can do this. Just as we're going to say that with the rest of marriage relationships and the home life, like you're hopeless apart from Jesus. You're not just going to come, take these principles, apply them, and it's going to be transformative. You need Jesus to enter your heart and transform you. That's your only hope. It's not try harder. It's not be better. It's surrender to him and let his spirit work in you. Because when that happens, it looks like this. So as a dependent child, to honor is to obey. But as an independent child, that relationship obviously changes. The lifelong call in my life is not to only be obedient to my parents, as much as my mother would love that to be the case. It looks different, right? But now in an honoring relationship, it's to give weight to their counsel and care that they need. Right? Like things change eventually, and ideally, like when I get old, if Hannah goes before me, I'm doomed. I'm a glorified baby, all right? So I'm going to need my kid to step up. If she exits the scene, it's like, I need someone to take care of me now, all right? That's how it's supposed to function. That would be a form of honor for my children to meet my needs and to make sure that I was taken care of, as well as they grow up to ask me for counsel and to help. I don't have to no longer play this role, talk about this next week, as being a cop or someone who tells them what to do, but more as a counselor, as a coach. So in an honoring way, to reach out to your parents, if they fit this, if they're able and qualified to help you, to show them honor, even when you don't want to, just to throw them the opportunity to say, hey, what do you think about this? That's a way to honor your parents into older ages in stages of life. And then when the time comes, if they have health that degrades, the most likely people to step in, as I believe God has designed the family to be, is the children rise up to take care of them. Now, we talked about this last week a lot, the ideal and unideal world of marriages and what that looks like. In the same way, I know there's not ideal situations with parents. Your relationship with your parents might be very complicated. What do you do with abusive or bad parents? How do you honor and obey them? That's a question I had. And I would say every case is very unique, We need to walk that out carefully, but there's some principles at play that we think we do need to live under. Because honoring and obeying, sometimes we'll be saying, as we talked with Jesus, saying no to them to follow him, to honor and obey him as our higher power. But what does it look like if we have abusive, bad parents? There's a saying I heard before that this reality is that trust is earned, but honor is given. The people in your life who are meant to nurture you may be the people that have hurt you the most. You may not feel safe with them anymore. You may not trust them as you wish you could, but honor is something that you can still extend, even to your own pain and fault. This is the Christian ethic that we see Jesus teach in Luke 6. I'm going to read this at length, starting in verse 27. He says this, "But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you." It's a hard saying to receive. Sounds great. Hard to practice. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. To the one who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And the one who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who begs from you. And from the one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. And as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. That's a principle we talked about. I think of you before I think of me. You're more important than me. 32, if you love those who love you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners, those who don't know God, don't have his Spirit, even they do that. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. But love your enemies. Do good and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High. For he, God, our Heavenly Father, he's kind to the ungrateful and the evil. So be merciful, even as your Father is merciful. Now that's a principle, spiritual, general principle that's tough to apply to every situation, but it's the call in our lives as followers of Christ. Whether it's your enemy, your mortal enemy, or your own parent. The call is to love them, to pray for them, to show mercy to them. It ought not be that way, but sometimes that is the case in a broken world. The Bible tells us that we are not to seek revenge. It tells us in Romans 12, vengeance is God's. What he tells you to do, to be kind to them. He'll take care of it in his own timing. Your role is not to get even. It's not to treat them the same as they treated you. It's to demonstrate Christ's likeness. To some of you in the room, that is a very difficult situation. For most of us, that's very possible. For most of us, we can practice this. And let me just help you out here. Parents are parenting out of what they've been given. There's no parent that starts off with these aspirations of being a bad parent. But they can only do what was done to them. They may not be perfect. They may miss a lot. And there's some ways you may not understand until you only have your own kids, where even when it looks like they're being hateful, it's from a place of love. It's hard to explain. But extend grace, because they're doing the best with what they've been given. And for some of them, it wasn't much. And God's call in our life is to extend that olive branch of grace even to our own pain. That's what honor looks like. That's what obedience looks like. So how do kids win the home? They obey their parents. They honor their parents. To close, I want to give 3 summary kind of points and motivations for why we should do this. Whether you're a kid in this room right now, a dependent adolescent, or if you're someone who's outside of that season of life, why should kids obey and honor? First off, it's God's call on their life. Children, obey your parents in the Lord. It says in the Lord. Not only prescribes the kind and extent of our obedience to our parents, but also teaches us that it's an act of faith and service to the Lord. This is, just as the parent's assignment is to parent you, your assignment is to obey and honor them. The late James MacArthur recently passed away. He said this: many young people struggle with knowing God's will for their lives. Obeying your parents is the right place to start. You want to know what God wants you to do in your life right now? It's not to figure out the whole picture. It's to be faithful to what he's assigned to you in this moment, in this season. And for you right now, that looks like obeying and honoring your parents. Because really, it's not about them. You're not obeying your parents to obey your parents. You're obeying your parents for God. It's way more about him and your service to him. Secondly, it's God's design. He says, for this is right. To obey your parents in the Lord, it's right. It comes from this word that literally means just or righteous. That which is right, conformable to right, pertaining to right, that which is just. This is expected by the one who sets the rules and regulations whereby man must live. That's God. In other words, as we've been saying, this call of God in your life to obey and honor is not just fitting, but it's good. Whether you believe it or not, it's what's best for you. We say this a lot here at King City Church, but God's commands, his rules, the things he calls us to are not just to be these killjoys. It's not just to rob us of our joy. It's to give us life. It's safe and good and right for us to run in his lanes. They protect us. You may have not gone the best parents or been raised in the best home, but you can practice now what is right and good for your future family. The reality is you can't be right with God while disobeying or dishonoring your parents. Outside of exceptions of allegiance to Jesus, just baseline obedience and honoring, if you're refusing to do that right now, you're disobeying the word of the Lord, which puts you at odds with him. Just like a husband can't be right with God if he fails to honor his wife. We talked about that in 1 Peter 3. He ignores his prayers if he doesn't honor his wife. In the same way, if kids rebel against their parents, you can't expect to have his blessing on you. Which leads to the third one, it's God's blessing. It's not only God's call, it's not only God's design, but it's God's blessing on your life to do this. It says that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Now, it's interesting that Paul uses this. The consensus amongst scholars and commentators are actually puzzled by this because the phrase that he's using comes from the Old Testament, which was always about Canaan, the promised land. And we don't live in that world anymore. We're not waiting for Canaan. We're going to go to heaven. We got all these things have been changed in the new covenant. So they're trying to figure out what is Paul actually doing. Maybe he's talking about heaven. Maybe he's trying to use a picture of that for us to understand that it's coming. But what most have decided is that Paul is actually teaching proverbially. That just like the book of Proverbs is not promises, but it's principles, in the same way, Paul is trying to tell us that the most often case, if you follow these things, it will go well for you in this life. The most likely outcome for your life, if you obey and honor your parents, is that it will go well with you. And that may not always pan out. We got people who have been obedient to their parents and honor their parents, and life has been rough. We've had people who've rebelled against their parents their whole life, and they made out pretty good. But for the majority of the time, what the Bible says is this: if you follow this pattern, it will go well for you. The family will be blessed by this. It will thrive under this structure. At a minimum, it's better to walk in God's blessing than his opposition. So why should kids obey and honor their parents? Because it's God's call on their life. It's God's design for their life, and it's God's blessing on their life. Kids win the home by demonstrating Christ-likeness by obeying and honoring their parents. So to close, here's a few action steps for everyone in the room. If you're a child today, you're a dependent, you're in the middle school, high school age, maybe you're younger than that, but you're listening to this sermon, find a way to honor your parents this week. More than just obeying them, find a way to honor them, whether verbally. Thank them for being their parents. Bless them somehow in that way. For adults, if your parents are still around and you're able, maybe give them a phone call this week. That might be weird out of the blue, but I think it would bless them. That was somewhere I had to grow in my own area of life. My relationship with my mom, I wasn't being honoring towards her. Then we had a come to Jesus moment where I had to apologize, and now we have a great relationship. She says this. It's a great relationship. But she just wanted me to call her every now and then. I think it can't be understated how far it can go to just reach out. Honor them in that way in this stage of life if you're in it. And then for parents, as we look to next week, your kids' obedience doesn't save them. Only Christ does, but how you parent can either help or hinder them in that path. So right now, be praying towards that end. How are you helping your kids in the path that they're being called to run in? Let's pray.